Hi, my name is Liv, and welcome to Blade of Desire. I am so excited for this video because I've had it planned out for so long. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into one of my very favorite of all time music genres, which is hypnagogic pop. I wanted to make this video as much as I did because I only recently discovered the term, even though I've been listening to this genre for such a long time and I've never really had a name for it. I just always considered it like melancholy, gritty, down, kind of slowcore, but rap too. I don't know. I didn't really have a name for it. So I just kind of had this amalgamation of ideas in my head. But then I found out it's actually called hypnagogic pop. So think of some of your favorite, more underground artists today. For example, I love Dean Blunt so much. He is one of my favorite rappers of all time. Honestly, if not a top 3, number 1 of all time. I love him so much. He's considered hypnagogic pop, even though he's in rap. And then you can also span as wide as think Bar Italia, George Clanton even has been considered to be this term. There's so many artists that I know you guys know and love that would fall under this umbrella. This genre of music and the discovery of it and the influence of it pretty much changed artists in the 21st century and had a huge influence on current music that we see today, even outside of the genre. What I love so much about this genre is it pays homage to the past as well. So while it's helped so many prolific underground artists kind of get their foothold in present time, it also is paying its dues to the sound that it's inspired from, which I think is so sick. Today we'll be reviewing the etymology, artists from the genre itself, what it sounds like, where it got started, everything you need to know. You will leave this video knowing all of it. So get excited. I'm also going to throw in a playlist of my recommendations at the end of this video because this is a genre that I already listen to so much. I thought maybe that would be helpful for you guys if you're like, oh, okay, this sounds like it could be good, but where do I get started? You see, I've covered that because I'm on top of it. Alright, so let's start with the word itself. Hypnagogic is defined as the state between falling asleep and staying awake. It's kind of like that weird in-between point where you're like having some weird dreams, but you're also conscious. Think of that. Hypnos, which is the Greek word for sleep. I'll have it on the screen here because I have no idea if I said that right. But this word then became known as hypnagogic in, I think, the late 19th century is when the word first emerged. And so from that, hypnagogic pop was developed. And this state between being asleep and being awake and feeling just kind of weird and far out a little bit is what the genre is trying to recreate. It's the perfect word. So that being said, what do they define hypnagogic pop as? What does it mean to the average music nerd? Hypnagogic pop is music that evokes popular memory or nostalgia from music or sounds or even experiences of the past. God, I can't believe I remembered that. To get more detailed, this is a genre that was created in the 21st century, but it's actually trying to recreate the soundscapes of the 1980s music scene. This genre is also categorized by a few specific elements. Hypnagogic pop feels rather surreal and has a weird energy to it. It's all about emulating sounds of the past and giving them this dream-like quality, and usually it's always sounds that you're familiar with, whether it's video games or old commercials or anything like that. Anything that's coming from that 1980s soundscape is what you hear in hypnagogic pop, which is so cool. Because artists like to emphasize that dreamlike quality, a lot of hypnagogic pop you'll notice is usually super low quality, but the artist meant to do it that way. And I'll talk more about this later, but I think that knowing this and studying this is really important because it just shows how relevant it is in today's media. A lot of us today are focused on that feeling of nostalgia or melancholy. You see that when we watch a sad video or a sad movie or anything like that. Sometimes people like that feeling that nostalgia gives them to be able to go back and explore the past. And that's what hypnagogic pop aims to recreate, but we'll talk more about that later as well. Why did I do that? That was so corny. So, where did the term originate? The term was actually coined by a journalist, which I think is really cool. It was coined by David Keenan, who was a editor of The Wire. In 2009, Keenan? Who the is Keenan? In 2009, he coined the term. In 2009, he coined the term hypnagogic pop that we all know today. In his article, Keenan talks a lot about the underground scene and how that really, really influenced the creation of this genre in general. In this article, Keenan also mentions a lot of powerhouses in music in the 80s and states that this genre was inspired by them, which I think is really cool. He mentions Don Henley and the Eagles, I believe, most primarily, and personally, I love Don Henley. I grew up with my mom listening to him a lot, actually, so I thought that was really cool as well. The underground scene was so important because hypnagogic pop essentially is a lot like bedroom pop in the way that it does have that low quality, usually in bedroom production and feel. He recognized how important that scene was in basically proliferating. Is that a word? So he recognized how important that scene was in basically taking the genre and making it what it is today, which is also so cool. I love how the genre is focused on underground artists, and it's not something you hear a lot about. I just think that's so sick that entire worlds of music can exist and not everyone knows about it. Like, there's so many genres of music that I have never heard of yet, and the fact that I might get to explore that one day is so sick to me. Let's talk about the history of this genre. The pioneers of this movement were Ariel Pink and James Ferraro. They led the scene that made this genre as lo-fi as it is, and it actually borrows from not only lo-fi, but so many other adjacent genres, which I think is cool. Things like soft rock and dream pop and ambient music, it all kind of falls in the same circle with hypnagogic pop, which is also sick because I love those genres just as much. The Guardian actually quoted hypnagogic pop as such a listenable and enjoyable genre because of the grit and character attached to it, which I also thought was really cool because it's true, hypnagogic pop has so much character in every song. It's something you sit down to listen to one album and it takes you on this entire adventure, and that's what's so cool. Every song has a different but equally as strong feeling, which I feel like is something you don't get a lot with music all the time, and you don't always feel something with every song, but it feels like with hypnagogic pop you do, and that's what I love so much about it. Earlier in the video, I talked about how hypnagogic pop borrows a lot of sounds and music from the 1980s. So I wanted to dig a little bit deeper and find some examples of songs and what they sample and where it's from. I don't know, I just thought it would be fun. So forgive me if I say this name wrong because I've never known if I say this name correctly. But Oneotrix Point Never has a video game sample in one of their songs from 2009, actually. Now, I'm just going to quote the article directly on this because I will never be able to remember this, but according to the article I read, this track samples a YouTube video titled "I'm Still Here" and incorporates haunting lo-fi melodies that feel like a warped video game menu screen. The repetitive ambient loop recalls the static tones of early RPG or adventure game soundtracks, which is so sick because that's something that everyone can relate to, probably in some way, shape, or form. You played a video game growing up. So hearing that soundtrack and listening to that music, and it immediately takes you back to your childhood and reminds you of those memories. Another thing that I thought was kind of funny, but they actually use a lot of TV jingles, like old TV jingles, in Hypnagogic Pop, and that's a very frequent sample. You can see this with the group Macintosh Plus and their song The Library. According to the article, this track uses slow-down samples of smooth jazz and soft rock, creating an unsettling version of the innocuous music often heard in elevators or waiting rooms. The looping structure and reverb evoke the sterile familiarity of corporate environments. This is personally one of my favorite hypnagogic groups, Hype Williams, who is made by Dean Blunt, the producer. It's his rap group of sorts, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, don't come for me in the comments. I promise I love Dean Blunt. In the song The Throning, this lo-fi surrealist track features hazy textures and muffled production, evoking the sound of a home video or VHS recording buried in storage for decades. So in this song, they use samples of old VHS tapes to make the song, which again is so nostalgic and dreamy and melancholic, and I love it. I also mentioned that there were a lot of artists in and of themselves that helped spread and create the genre from the 80s and 90s, so the songs that artists now are trying to sample from then. Some of these artists include Kate Bush, Hall & Oates, Tangerine Dream, Brian Eno, Boards of Canada, and the Cocteau Twins. Those are all perfect examples of groups that artists today use and sample and try to sound like when they're making hypnagogic pop. And of course, I have to list some artists that I personally love now that are in the hypnagogic pop genre. 106 Point Never, Dean Blunt, Hype Williams, George Clanton, and Double Virgo, who is also very heavily shoegazy and dream pop as well, but to me they fit into this category definitely. The last thing that I wanted to list off today were some of the music labels that I discovered that specialize in hypnagogic pop, because I thought that was cool, and record labels actually aren't something that I usually find myself exploring often. But my partner, who also loves music, I feel like he knows all of them off the top of his head ever, and he knows who everyone is signed to sometimes. So it kind of inspired me to pay more attention to record labels when I'm exploring and researching music, because that's something that I'm doing constantly. Ariel Pink, 106 Point Never, and DuckTales are all signed to a music label called Mexican Summer. Hype Williams is signed to Planet Mu, and George Clanton, I thought was really cool, actually made and started his own record label called 100% Electronica. I also wanted to include some critical acclaim about hypnagogic pop, just because it's really interesting to see what other articles and news outlets have to say about the genre, but I'm just going to include those next in a little slide, because it would not be fun if you guys just sat here and listened to me read 5 whole paragraphs. You don't want that, so read at your own pleasure. guess that's it. You guys know all about it now, and how exciting is that? I have been preparing for this video for so long, and this is one of the first ideas that I had before I even dreamt of starting my YouTube channel. So I'm really glad that I finally got to sit down and make this video, and I really hope that maybe you guys learned something. Like I said, I'm gonna plug my Spotify playlist at the end of this video as well, so you're about to see that, and I'll link it down in my bio as well, along with the original David Keenan article, because it was a really interesting read, and if you guys were interested in this video, you might like it as well. So look at me just giving you some goodies. So both of those things will be linked below, and of course I'll be back with a new video soon, most likely on Monday, if my week surely goes as planned. So we'll see on that one. But thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I hope that you liked it, and I will see you next time.